You can just start us, and I'll let Bob
We
know.
are started now, Bruce Hart. I am here. I am the humble host of Testosterone Overload on YouTube. I am Matt Legit. I am here with the legendary, the iconic king of Stampede Wrestling, Bruce Hart. I am here with the most incredible photojournalist, an amazing historian of professional wrestling, the one and only Dr. Mike Lano. And I am here with my lovable sidekick, Sean Bryant from the Pacific Northwest. I am Matt Legit. And we're talking about how black wrestlers matter. So, Dr. Mike Lano, my first question for you is, did you ever get to meet Celie Samara, Luther Lindsay, or Shag Thomas?
Shag Thomas at, I think, one of Dean Silverstone's roasts. There were just only a few territories. I've been shooting for the magazines all over the world since '66. And one of the few territories, I didn't make that, and I didn't make Calgary. Made up for it when they invited me up. Bruce did, in fact. December 15th, 1995. I have that date etched in my memory because it was Stu's 80th. We had that private family birthday party, but that followed the historic Calgary Stampede, amazing show with a lot of African-American athletes on there, and people, because there was a lot of racial diversity in Calgary. I mean, besides Japanese guys coming in, the Cuban assassins, and there was African-American wrestlers of all sorts. You had Mike Shaw portraying a guy from, where was he from? He was from the country next to Pakistan.
Oh, Malcolm Singh.
Good guys. And Gama Singh. So, but not Luther Lindsay, who was one of those legit hooker shooter guys. Did your dad break him in? Where did he get his? I would assume your dad did or had to.
Who's that?
Luther Lindsay.
Yeah, Luther kind of. I just heard that he maybe broke in Ohio with Al Haft or something like that, or he was, but pretty early on in his career in the mid-50s, he was up in Calgary, and he and my dad became really good buddies. And my dad had a lot of respect for Luther, not only because he was a great worker, but he was, as you guys probably know, a legit shooter, so he and my dad kind of became really good buddies. And he was kind of like one of the, I think around that time, my dad had a bit of a propensity for those shooter types. So you had guys like George Gordienko and Gordon Nelson and Ray Gordon and guys like that were pretty legit. And Luther was right up at the top of that list. And he kind of, my dad told me back in the 50s, that a lot of the North American promoters, especially down in the South, and some of that refused to use black wrestlers like Luther, and there was a few others that were pretty high profile, talented guys like Bearcat Wright and Celie Samara and some of those guys, and most of them couldn't get work in a lot of the places, especially down in the South. It was kind of the pre-Martin Luther King era, a lot of tension, a lot of KKK and all that stuff. So my dad seemed to have a regular, steady stream of all these black guys, a lot of whom were really talented that couldn't seem to find work in the States, like Luther. And I remember he had that other old guy, you might have heard of him, Mike, named Woody Strode.
I was just going to say, I had the only convention I ever saw. I know I'm going off topic, and I do want to salute Hana Kimura. Hana Kimura was a Stardom female wrestler, only 22, reality star, who was so tormented by social media and people trashing her on there, which was a real problem in the United States. She committed suicide like 2 weeks ago. So that's like the number 2 story, other than all of these many wrestlers like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, issuing statements, Mark Henry, Booker T going out and actually marching. But Woody, at that Sam Munchnick 3-day weekend convention I did in St. Louis in May of 1991, Killer Kowalski went up and said that, and he cried up on stage. He said how he used to have to sneak the guys he main evented with, Woody Strode and Bobo Brazil, into his hotel room. They wouldn't rent. He just main evented, Woody or Bobo, a couple of miles away from this hotel or motel. They wouldn't rent to him or serve him. So Walter Kowalski, the heel, would sneak him into his room, They could stay there, sleep, and eat, get them food, bring it back to the room. But it was just really ridiculous. And a Calgary Stampede legend, one of the total all-time greats, Dan Crawford, the original King Crow Crawford, who had the great history in New Japan with Inoki and all that stuff, and the United National Championship in LA. But he had his first match in LA with Earl Maynard, who experienced a ton of racism all around, even in Dory Funk Sr.'s Amarillo territory. And I nagged the both of them maybe 6-7 years ago to come to the Cauliflower Alley Club I'm a photographer for, and Bruce is famous for. And they came, they didn't know each other was going to be there together that same year. So Earl Maynard, African-American, Mr. Universe superstar from the Bahamas, where he owns a hotel. Dan Crawford, the real Dan Crawford, King Crow from Calgary. They come together and they cried when they saw each other, hugged and all this. Just about 6-7 years ago. And that was heartwarming for me to nag them both to come and attend.
I remember when I was a kid, Mike, I was pretty young then, but my dad seemed to have a whole bunch of these iconic black guys. I almost took it for granted. He had, like Bearcat Wright was up there, and John Kindred, they called him the Harlem Cat, and Rocky Johnson, Rock's father, was kind of breaking in up there, and Woody Strode, of course, and Luther, and there was a few misfits like Zulu, but my dad had, and my dad told me that most of those guys in this couldn't find that much work in the States. Some of them worked around Portland, maybe, and
yeah, we had Celie Samara was, heavyweight champion out here in Portland way back in the 40s, which is crazy to think of.
What was the name of that guy? I wrote this piece on what I called, like, if there was a Mount Rushmore for black wrestlers. And I included, so I probably in error, and I said this is subject to argument. I had, this was just the TV era, late 50s, mid to late 50s on. Bobo, Art Thomas, Sailor Art Thomas, Sweet Daddy.
Oh, yeah, Sailor Art.
Sweet Daddy, all those guys. Reggie Siki, and Dory Dixon, who
Daddy and Abby.
Who else?
My dad seemed to have all of them up here. Roy Callender and Earl Maynard was up here, and a few others, and my dad told me a lot of them were kind of not able to find work in a lot of the places in the States, and I don't know, the promoters were racists or the fans didn't like them, or I never quite knew what I guess it was.
They were over. Those guys were over. For example, in San Francisco, my two home bases shooting ringside for the program, and that's I got my magazine job with all the magazines, including what was then Monthly Gong before it went to Shukan or Weekly Gong of Japan, and its later competitor Weekly Pro, Shukan Pro. San Francisco was my secondary territory, so that's where Rocky went and was the first guy other than Bearcat Wright and Bobo that got some nice pushes there and was put on top. Eventually,
the late 60s that Rocky Johnson went down there, somewhere in there.
Right. And I think he came
and
straight.
He worked for my dad about 66, 67.
And
somewhere in that. Whipper Watson had sent him in he's from Nova Scotia initially. Right. Wade Bowles, his real name, Rocky Johnson, but yeah, he was one of the first that I recalled getting a push in
listen to this. California. I don't mean to keep interrupting. So Bruno had his time off from Vince Sr. He asked to have the strap taken off. They put it on Morales in 71, and Bruno would book himself around the territories. And he went to a couple of times for Shire and twice for us in Los Angeles, which was huge. But he's in a 6-man with Pepper Gomez, who lived 2 blocks away from me in Alameda, California. Pepper and Rocky versus Shibuya and Saito and I think Ripper Collins from Hawaii, from Honolulu, Roy Collins. And before the match starts, Rocky goes right up to Bruno in his ear and he goes, "Man, you got to get me out of here. Shire's is a total racist. I'm not getting the money, everybody else is. I'm not getting pushed, right, and blah, blah, blah." And he begged Bruno, and both of them told me this personally on the old show, that that was true. And Rocky eventually came in, but it was Bruno didn't have much of a hand in it. It was Pat Patterson who brought him in with most of those San Francisco guys that came into Vince McMahon Sr.'s territory. Don Morocco, Fuji returned, Mavia, it was all tons of San Francisco guys. But Rocky had, begged Bruno, get me out of here. And Shire, who used to co-host my old Canvas Cavity TV show, admitted he was racist. He said, yeah, sure, I'm racist, but if a black guy could make me money, I would utilize him. So he even admitted it himself. So you've got all three parties involved. It just did hit me as very sad because those guys were so super over. Rocky in Los Angeles helped turn Freddie Blassie babyface. I was on with Bubba Dudley on that Busted Open Sirius XM show and Tommy Dreamer, and they wanted to hear about this. So Blassie does a heel series of cage matches with the Sheik in Los Angeles with the Olympic Auditorium in 1970. He's slightly turned face, not fully accepted by the marks, the fans. So Rocky agrees. Blassie says, let me do a what we called a scientific match. That was code for babyface match. I won't cheat. If I cheat, I'll leave town of my own volition. And they went a legit half hour or an hour is what it was called, probably closer to 35. And Rocky Johnson turned Fred Blassie babyface, and Blassie was over like a mofo. His first face turn in LA in 1970, and then they started teaming, and the place would go bananas. So any of these guys in Los Angeles, Bobo and Bearcat Wright, the first black world champions, were WWA world champions in Los Angeles, way before Ron Simmons was an NWA WCW champion, which was a big deal. But we're talking 1962, 63 for Bobo and Bearcat in Los Angeles with that title. The WWA title was recognized on the West Coast and Hawaii, and of course Japan.
Dr. Mike, that brings me a question. You just mentioned Ron Simmons, quote, being the first African-American world champion, but wasn't Ernie Ladd initially given a title before?
Oh, yeah. I think in the Boston area. Well, no, what I said was that Bobo Brazil and then Bearcat Wright were the first black world champions, to my knowledge. I could be wrong, of any organization. And we're talking 62, 63, 64, because they both, or at least Bobo had multiple runs. Bearcat had that infamous thing where he wouldn't drop the title to Blassie. And then Gene LaBelle had to shoot on him in the parking lot, and Bearcat peed his pants, dropped the world WWA title. But Ron came much later, whatever year that was, 80, whatever the year that was, with Bill Watts. So it must have been actually probably 93, 92, 93 when Ron Simmons got his. But Ernie Ladd had a world title. Of course, he was many times America's champion in Los Angeles. I just forget the organization. It wasn't Paul Bowser in the Boston, New England area. Somebody else. And I think Ernie Ladd also held the world championship for the IWA, which was an AWA affiliate in Japan when there was only three groups around 73. There was All Japan, New Japan, Bobby Noki, and then IWE with stars like Rusher Kimura, Shoso Strong Kobayashi, Thunder Sugiyami, and people like that. And Ladd, like Billy Graham and Paul Bergeron and other Gaijin foreigners, were world champions there. So, there were, and then Tiger Conway, one of my dearest friends, his son, we're waiting for Tiger Conway Jr. here, but Tiger Conway Sr. was just one of the sweetest, nicest people ever. And it used to break my heart. He would break this out and say, in 1963, they gave me the Negro World Championship. And it just tore my guts out. He didn't get a regular world championship in the Houston area with Morris Siegel before Paul Bosch. He was given a Negro World Championship, so it's very hurtful hearing that. But he was proud, he was very proud of it. And what a great guy. Bruce, you knew Tiger Sr. Hadn't you met him at some of the deals, like the couple of cauliflower eyes you were at?
I remember back in the 50s, they were pushing something called the Negro World Championship or something like that. And I think Luther had that, and Bearcat Wright, and I think Celie Samara and Jack Claiborne, even back in the 40s, had it. It was kind of I don't know which territories were featuring it or whatever. It seemed like it was kind of in its own way a little bit kind of a statement on the racial, situation in wrestling, but I always heard for years the NWA, a lot of the brass was, I know Luthez told me that at one time he was advocating for Luther Lindsay to win the NWA world title back in the early 60s. And he said a lot of the old guard, the promoters in Tennessee and Florida and even Frisco and that were kind of adamant, no, we, in most cases they didn't even want black guys fighting for the world title, and that seemed to be kind of just part of the racial environment back in those days,
Yeah, I don't want to trash Roy Shire too much because he had his good qualities too. A lot of these guys, it wasn't black and white in the Jim Crow days. So yeah, Roy Shire admitted he was racist, but he was one of the first guys to really prominently feature in a main event a white guy against a black guy. When at that time you still had these guys traveling black matches. Like even in LA, sometimes if Bobo came in to do some guest shots on his way to All Japan for Baba, they would just throw him against Ernie Ladd. But in Rocky's case, or even prior to that, Bearcat and Bobo, they would have Roy Shire's U.S. title singles matches with whoever the champion was, which Ray Stevens was the heel. So they were on top there. So he would book them, whereas in many territories, it was just black match time, like Amarillo or obviously Tennessee. So if we say something about like a Gus Karras or the guy Nick Goulas, he had a lot of great qualities too. So it wasn't strictly, this guy was tight with the paydays for the boy, as is rumored with Nick Goulas, because he had lots of other good qualities, and tons of people were created there, before the Jack Pfeffer stuff of stealing Jackie Fargo from Memphis and billing him as, what was he billed as? Bud Knee Rogers. That guy that would take all those guys who were still fantastic workers, but, call him Bruno San Martino or Len Thez or Vern Gagme, and it wasn't the real guy. People would mistake it and buy the tickets. Jack Pfeffer, crazy story.
So I can tell you guys that Luther Lindsay was, from what I've researched, was probably the first black guy to hold an NWA title. When Don Owen joined the NWA in 1955, Luther Lindsay was the first Pacific Northwest heavyweight champion. And it just kind of shocks me to be back in the 50s like that.
Yeah, right.
I think.
And then in the 60s, it's so weird because, when he would go to like the South, Luther would compete for the Negro title, but up here he was in a tag team with Pepper Martin, who was, obviously a white guy. Most people probably don't know who Pepper Martin is. He's the guy that punched out Superman in Superman 2.
He's screenwriter genius. He was the first guy ever. And then Bruce was going to say something. Pepper Martin was the first guy to do color commentary, and he was doing it in two territories at once, my two home base territories, LaBelle, Los Angeles, and San Francisco Shire. And he would fly back, forth, and he would also wrestle and do acting and start doing screenwriting. But Bruce, you were going to say something, and you your audio got drowned out. What were you going to say about Luther? Was it?
I always heard back in the day, it was really good territory as far as quality of wrestling, Minneapolis, AWA, but I always heard that they had a pronounced aversion to blacks. Like for years, I don't think there was even any black wrestlers, much less black champions in AWA. The only token black I even recall being in there was maybe Sailor Art Thomas.
But that was from the joint shows with Bruiser and Gagne, who ran Chicago together. After Fred Kohler retired and Bob Luce took over, he would feature Bruiser's Indianapolis WWA guys, and Art Thomas, who was a WWA world champion, I think in the late 60s, and then again in the early 70s, several times. And he and Bobo would come in, but they really wouldn't work for Vern's regular AWA all by himself. But the joint Chicago thing, which was kind of unique, featuring both AWA and WWA guys, not really WWA championships. The title belts weren't recognized, only the AWA title belts, but they had tons of great Dick the Bruiser guys. And weirdest thing is, I'll shut up. But after a match, first with Blassie and then Bobo in Los Angeles, where we were the WWA until '67, when they had the unification match with WWA champion Bobo and NWA champ Kiniski, an hour draw, and then officially they retired the WWA title. But back around, was it 63, 64, Bruiser left with the belt. He didn't get scared by Gene LaBelle the way Bearcat Wright had. Left with the WWA title. And then when he started his promotion, he called it the WWA. And he had the same championships that we had in LA. So he literally stole that concept. And then it was great when he ran in Detroit against the Sheik. But his promotion, WWA, he stole that whole concept after a match with like Brazil in Los Angeles and took the belt with him. They had to recreate the whole belt, which, you heard that in other territories. The guy leaves with the belt as collateral or whatever. It wasn't collateral in this case.
I'm told that Abby's supposed to be joining us soon, but I'm not sure. Bob Johnson's on some kind of a prolonged kind of mission to get him on. I think he's got Abby on the phone. I'm not sure why he hasn't come on yet, but I'd love to get some.
I got to ask you, Bruce, because, and I want to ask Abby, because I always get different stories. I've been around Abby all over the world, Japan, etc. Like in 1990, I'm there at a Christmas show at the Korakuen Hall, and Abby does this long pause. He has the microphone after he won a squash match or early on, like a battle royal, a shit battle royal. And he's on the mic. He's looking at it for like 2 minutes because he's never spoken in Japan before. And finally, like the clock strikes, 11 o'clock or something, he goes, "Happy New Year." And the place went out of their minds. They heard him say 2 words. They never heard him speak. But he came, I know, but anyway, I ask him all the time because both Sheik and George Crybaby Cannon take credit for creating the Abdul the Butcher gimmick. Abby always says he did it on his own, and George Cannon always said he was full of S, that he himself, Cannon, did it, or in concert with the Sheik. And I know from Ontario, then he had major history in Calgary, and he came down to LA. I shot his debut. He came for TV and just a couple of shows, never came back because LaBelle screwed him on his money. But he came with a midget manager, and he doesn't recall that. He had some worker, I think one of Sky Lolo's guys from Montreal, as his manager, and it was the most bizarre thing. Abby was skinny Abby then, still, hefty, but skinny Abby, 1970. What was his history he had pretty major history, like another guy that took your money and ran, I think, was, Stomper, Mongolian.
Archie.
But what was Abby's history in Calgary? Tremendous history.
What's that again?
What was Abby's history in Calgary? Lots of history.
Oh, he came up in about '69. That guy named, I think his name was Jack Britton. He was a promoter in Montreal. Called my dad and arranged to send him up. And I think my dad had that other old. He was kind of a mainstay up there too around that time. A guy named Archie Goldie, the Stomper, and Abby and Archie didn't seem to get along, though. They were kind of almost vying for the top heel spot and resented each other. But Abby was a little less high-strung than Archie. My dad told me that Abby was a bit easier to handle, but he had a hell of a run-up in Calgary. Oddly enough, most of the guys he was working with were black guys, too, like Carlos Colon, or Belafonte, as he was called in Calgary. And I think right around that time, Abby broke in that, I think he was breaking in around that same time, Wayne Coleman, Billy Graham superstar. I think that other old fart was up there at that time, inebriated every night, Dr. Terry Graham.
Yeah,
That's how Billy.
As we learned from Bruce Hart, Doctor of Hypnosis. What a bullshit degree that
was actually how Wayne Coleman took the name Billy Graham, from Dr. Jerry. But yeah, he would.
They came down. Jerry brought him from Calgary to L.A., and they teamed as the Graham brothers, the new Graham brothers. There was no Eddie in the picture. Of course, was promoting successfully in Florida. Yeah. The new Graham brothers.
My dad was always intrigued at all these. My dad had broken Crazy Luke Graham up in Calgary too, and he took the name Graham. It's going to the dogs here. But yeah, my dad was always intrigued at how these people.
What's your dog's name, Bruce?
Mad Dog.
What's your dog's name?
Yeah.
Vashon?
Hank.
Hank. Bad dog.
Yeah.
Now I get the Dutch Mafia with the Dutch Savage logo and that's with the glove, the coal miner's glove, because you are in the Pacific Northwest. Or that's
I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I had the fortune of getting to know Dutch pretty well the last few years of his life.
I tried to nag him. He was going to come to Cauliflower Alley and bring Bull Ramos with him.
Oh yeah.
What he told me, he was a really nice guy. And man, did he have a great heel match with Fred Blassie in Los Angeles in 1970. He also had a great heel match with Fritz von Erich, the one and only time they ever met, Dutch with him. And there was a couple of potatoes thrown in that one and some heat in the back, some receipts in the ring and heat in the back. But Dutch, at the very end, he said he booked his plane flight stuff, and he goes, when I heard that Ed was telling Buddy Rose, those two drug addicts, according to him, were going to be there, he decided not to come. And I thought that was chicken S. I was so unhappy because I know Piper and Buddy Rose and Wiskowski would have loved to have seen Dutch. And for him to, do allegations and shit like that around it was kind of upsetting. But
well, Dutch and Buddy had a big falling out. And after, hearing kind of more about Buddy in real life, I could see why.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Dutch was a consummate professional, and he was running the territory when they kind of took over from Silver. Silver kind of got pushed out, and Dutch took that for Sander Kovacs and I think Kaniski. They were running. Was it running Vancouver? Was it? Where was Dutch booking and running things? Maybe it was Portland or Oregon or Washington State. Washington State, I think. That's
yeah. Dutch promoted after Dean Silverstone closed up shop. Dutch promoted for a few years in the Seattle area.
And I'm sure he had all the talent because Silverstone was using lesser-known guys, like the chain gang guys, etc.
That's one of the guys. Okay, I'm going to Hi, Bob. Sorry, I didn't mean to interfere. I got a very special guest, Matt, on the other line. He can see everybody.
Well, I just need him to connect one of his devices. He either needs to choose to let us hear him or see him, and then I can bring him in here.
Okay.
Because it says that he's there. It just won't let me allow him in until he uses gives access to his audio.
We'll bring him on in a second.
The button that says access to his audio.
Okay, so is there a button on there?
This is what I see. This is to the people watching right now. This is what I was talking about. You get these folks, and then some of them over 60. They don't quite get it. Bob likes to tell everyone just put it in the Google and push enter. And I'm like, that is not a good description, Bob.
No,
he uses the word Google in ways that is inappropriate.
Yeah, because I was shitting bricks because this is a lot different than Zoom, but it's working perfectly great. And
I like it a lot better than Zoom, to be honest with you, Mike. I can't stand Zoom.
Wow. I was part of, and there's going to be one next Saturday because all these boys aren't making money with all the signings and conventions put on hold by the pandemic. They did one last month, about 6 weeks ago, COVID Con, Wrestling Fans Convention. It's all online. They did it for 2 days straight. Each of the boys would get a half-hour segment to push their books primarily or their gimmicks or whatever. Then we had a lot of guys just telling stories, and I wanted to interview both Bushwhacker Luke and Dutch Mantell on booking Puerto Rico. I thought that would be a great half-hour, real serious, no filler conversation. How dangerous was booking Puerto Rico with those fans? I got hit with a couple of lit M80s when I shot there before the horrific Brody murder and never went back. But they're having one next Saturday, COVID Con, and there's X amount of folks on there. There's Sid, I think, again, and DDP and Tugboat Taylor, who was Tugboat in the WWF, and then the Demolition. Those two guys, we sure Barry Darso have tons of good stories. But I think that's it's making it kind of cool. So you get like a visual, if you're a wrestling person, instead of straight audio, like in a radio show, now you can kind of see these guys. And, if you want to see DDP show off all of his plaques and trophies and yoga for guys or yoga for regular people, DDP yoga, you can see it'll take you for a tour of his place.
Is it true you were going to take us for a tour of some of your photojournalism?
I can't because I'm down here in my wife's study because I couldn't make it work on either of my two. I've got two like 15-year-old, 10-year-old iMacs, so I had to use her new thing in her room. I wanted to hold up my shots because I was with Owen and Benoit, who was really close with 1990-91 in Japan when they were tag teaming up. And Owen had already lost his mask there, but Chris was still working as Pegasus Kid. Bruce, what was Owen's mask name? What was Owen's mask name under the hood?
Let's have Tiger Conway turn down whatever he's watching us on.
But Owen had a hood on in Japan. And so
Okay.
All right, I think we have Tiger Conway on here, folks.
I see my name on there now.
There he is.
I'm not sure what's
Go ahead, and I'll turn this off.
Oh, God.
You're on. Thanks, Tiger.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Tiger, is that you or is that Abby?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We hear you.
Tiger, it's Mike Lano, Bruce Hart, and the big host of this show. I haven't Tiger Jr. I haven't talked to you in years.
Tiger on there? I can't hear him.
Bob?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can hear Tiger.
They're in and something took them out.
Okay. Yeah, you're in.
Huh?
But I have.
Hang up on Bob Johnson, Tiger. Whatever you do, hang up on
I
Bob.
gotta disconnect you on my phone. Shit. You need to connect to the bill.
Yeah, disconnected.
Hey, well,
I'll hang up.
Hell of a booker, Bob. Hell of a booker.
Yeah.
And you should be streaming with him. Go back to that screen. I'll hang up right now.
Please hang up, Bob.
And if I can't hear you, I'll phone you right back.
Okay.
Did I say something funny? I was the guy that came up with the now long-used wrestling phrase, "Who booked this shit?" And that was done. I was shooting ringside the WCW Flair Fujinami rematch, and in Tampa, their particular sportatorium, not the Dallas, but the Tampa sportatorium. And when Oz, that whole thing they did, the Wizard of Oz thing, I'm right next to Jim Ross and Dusty Rhodes who were doing commentary. And I said, if it made the audio, who booked this shit? And now people have used it in ECW and Ring of Honor and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, all these great indies. And that's my catchphrase. Actually, that might be on my gravestone, my tombstone. Who booked this shit?
Well, let's see if Tiger Conway can hear us. Can you hear us, sir?
Tiger Jr., where are you? Tiger Jr., son of the legendary Tiger Conway Sr., tag team partner, champion Pistol Pez Watley.
We got nothing.
We don't have audio from Tiger?
I'll call him back and we'll keep working on it.
Okay. Oh, boy. Here we go, everybody. Get ready.
We're supposed to have Abby call in, and I think Tiger, we'll see if he or Abby are better on the mic. I'm sure both, I know Tiger Conway Sr. had to put up with lots of racism and Jim Crow stuff. When we say Jim Crow stuff, and I don't know if Canada had that. I think Canada's always been.
I'm going to mute him.
Well, that's his entrance music, right?
Jeez Louise.
You know what the entrance music I had when I was a heel ref, Bruce? It was Love Roller Coaster from the 70s. I forget the name of that group, an African-American group. But I'd come out as a heel, and the whole audience would be dancing to that old 70s song, Love Roller Coaster. I forget if it's Brothers Johnson or which group did it now. But
The Brothers Johnson, they were good.
Okay, so you'll have to, if you can go.
Oh, who's that? Is that Abdul the Cat, Bruce?
Yeah, this place is going to the cats and the dogs, but
Bruce, I'm surprised in your old age you don't do some sort of get a top hat and do some sort of Dr. Doolittle gimmick where you talk to the animals and teach them to wrestle. You have a bear in the backyard?
we did it one time. I remember my dad had the wrestling bear hibernating down in my basement when I was a kid. And I remember a few times we grabbed some of my younger brothers like Brett and Wayne and threw them in the bear cage and locked the thing. The bear would be kind of
I think Diana told me a story about how when she was little, she dripped the ice cream onto her toes and let the bear lick them off.
something like that. Yeah, I remember the bear was it was never in a good mood, as I recall. It was hibernating and half pissed off that you're disturbing it or whatever. But
I got those photos of Billy Graham in San Francisco at World Players TV wrestling just for the wrestling show. I forget whose trainer that was.
Okay, Tiger Conway Jr., we need you to somehow plug some headphones into your phone so that you can hear us better. And then we can hear you, I think. We're having some real technical difficulties. It sounds like you're listening to the show on a radio while you're still live on the show.
Oh, yeah, we can hear the audio. Yeah, that note silence is outgoing.
that
It's
sounds
the
like
mating
a dog.
call of the Wild Conway we heard there.
Bruce, for a second, tell me, did Stu ever drag Billy Robinson into the dungeon? And if so, what happened? I forgot. I know I heard the story. I asked him personally once, and it was a long story because it was Stu.
We can see your name on the screen.
What's that again?
How many times and what happened if Stu ever dragged Billy Robinson into the dungeon?
I think Billy was down there infrequently. I remember my dad had this other pretty tough old shooter type named George Gordienko up here around that same time. And my dad always said that Billy and George had a pronounced aversion to each other. And it's funny, the one guy I spoke to him, I was pretty young, but he didn't seem to have that much regard for the English shooters, was Luther.
Yep.
He seemed to be he had been over there and
Okay, we can see on.
he didn't speak that highly of them.
Well, Bert
Not sure.
Asariti was the other English big-time shooter.
Yeah, I remember Bert Asarati. He was kind of considered like one of the old kind of crowbars over there, and I heard he was pretty tough, but I heard he was like what they called a liberty taker. He used to kind of bully the guys who unsuspected, and that was kind of the norm for him. But yeah, guys seemed to either love Billy or hate him. He was one of those guys who was pretty polarizing, and Peter Maivia had that noteworthy episode with Billy over in Japan. That was kind of part of wrestling legend and lore. But yeah, Billy was a great worker, though, and some people seem to not have that much regard for his ethics outside the ring. But
Listen, sorry to interfere.
Oh, there's Tiger.
The great Tiger Conway Jr. on. Tiger, can you hear us?
Well, we can see him now, Bob, but we can't hear him because he doesn't have his audio connected.
Okay.
I tried to unmute him, and it told me the mic isn't connected.
Okay.
As my dad used to say,
Okay, we'll keep
they should
working on
be
it.
seen and not heard.
Okay.
Wow.
How are you, Tiger?
We can't hear you.
He can.
Silence golden, I guess. Or something
Well,
like
he
that.
can hear us.
Well,
He can.
as I was saying about 20 minutes ago when Tiger joined us, Tiger, I haven't talked to you in years. Bruce and I miss you. Haven't seen you. Tiger and his dad, they came to my St. Louis convention when we had lots of stuff going on. We had a tribute to African-American wrestlers, a tribute to women of wrestling, tribute to midgets, and the Pat O'Connor tribute. Everything was, of course, around the 3 days of Sam Munchnick. And my thing was unique. Cauliflower Alley got behind it because, they just helped me out, as did Bill Watson, Dusty at WCW, and Vince, if you can believe it, at WWF. all the boys paid their own way. I didn't have to, as the promoter, I didn't have to foot anything. And it was only because it was for Sam. So Thez and Ernie Ladd were my MCs. On day 3, I had Stan Hansen and Jimmy Snuka present one of Bruiser Brody's furry booths that had tons of cash and checks people had put together for a college fund for Jeff Goodish, his son. That was sent on to Barbara Goodish, who couldn't make it, but now I see her every year at Cauliflower. So I don't mean to keep pushing that, but she is there, total legend, gracious, one of the first ladies of wrestling. She and Leah, Maivia Johnson. I mean, Leah, The Rock's mom, she is at, or Ada, I'm sorry. Leah was her mom, who was married to Peter Maivia, but Ada is at like everything, every kind of reunion you can think of, the Mobile, Gulf Coast, the stuff in Buffalo. If it's happening, or a WrestleMania, Ada is going to be there. Right,
Dr. Mike, did you ever go to Hawaii?
Oh, yeah, HIC, Honolulu International Center. Oh, there's Tiger.
Is the mic working now?
We got him, ladies and gentlemen. Tiger Conway Jr.
Is it
Tiger,
working?
we haven't seen you in ages. I was just saying that you and your dad and your family and your mom, Anita, all came to my St. Louis Sam Munchnick convention, which was a huge deal in 91, May of 91. We did an African-American tribute. That was when Killer Kowalski broke down saying he had to sneak Bobo Brazil and Woody Strode into his hotel room because the asshole hotel managers wouldn't rent to them. And those guys had just main evented, miles from the place where they were at. It was really horrific listening to that stuff. And Kowalski broke down and cried.
Well, I don't know where Tiger went to.
We lost Tiger.
I was happy with the story. I do have a question from some folks watching live here tonight. Bruce Hart, how many times did Antonio Inoki work Stampede? What were Stu's thoughts of him?
He only worked a few times. It was usually part of one of those kind of overstated gong shows where it would be him and Sakaguchi and Fujinami, and they would have 3 or 4 kind of guys like Stan Hansen and Tiger Jeet Singh and a few of those guys. And he did that 2 or 3 times, I guess, maybe in the late 70s, early 80s, that kind of thing.
You ever work him?
Always understated. I worked over there a few times. I worked with Inoki and Sakaguchi and Fujinami and Kimura and Kobayashi and a bunch of them over there. But I think when they were over here, they always just worked with their own little kind of group of guys like Stan Hansen and Tiger Jeet and a few of those guys. And most of our fans were kind of like not sure what to make of it. Because it didn't have much to do with it. What's that?
I think we're getting some feedback.
That's how we sort of introduced. I think one of their early shows, Dynamite Kid worked with Fujinami, and they loved it. So they invited Dynamite over to Japan, and he ended up starting that storyline with Tiger Mask, and that became a hot ticket over there. But it was always kind of sterile, I thought, because Inoki and them didn't want to do anything interactive with our promotion, which was kind of counterproductive, I thought, But
Let me just, I'm sorry, I'm going to be interrupting tonight because I haven't been on the show in a couple of years. When Satoru Sayama, the original Tiger Mask, came into Calgary, did he ever work a match? Because those matches, we still can't get enough of the old 80s Dynamite Kid versus Sayama Tiger Mask.
It's funny, I saw Sayama over in England when I was over there in the 70s, and around the time when I met Dynamite, and they had him and this other big stiff guy that I think they called him over there Quick Kick Lee, but I can't remember. He was a big thing in Japan for a while. He was known to be sort of a potato artist or a stiff guy. I'm trying to remember his name, but
I'll remember it.
But yeah, there was
Andre. He had the feud with.
Hello. Had you on the show, and then we lost you again.
Tiger,
Can't
Khan,
take it.
can you hear us? Just wave.
Are you on there, Tiger?
We see Tiger.
I think we're seeing a frozen image of him now.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Killer Khan was the name of the big stiff guy. I think you're talking about Bruce. And Satoru Sayama worked as Quick Kick Lee in England, in Europe.
Yeah, that other guy was called Quick Kick Lee, or I don't remember what the hell his.
Well, that was Killer Khan, wasn't it? Killer Khan? It was his more.
No, Ozawa was Killer Khan. I remember my dad had about 10 of them at the same time. My dad had a guy named Harada who we converted into a Native American named Sonny Two Rivers, and I kept having to change their. I had Killer Khan as a Mongolian, and Georgie Takano was the Masked Cobra, and Shunji Takano from Cambodia, and Hiro Saito from Malaysia, and all that other. But yeah, we seem to have a ton of them. My dad had this old Japanese guy named Hito, and every time I come around would be bringing another. I think another couple were Yagi and Sumo Hera, and yeah. But yeah, it was. I think half of our crew was Japanese at that time. I'm not sure why. But.
Well, Keiji Muda, great Muda, came into Calgary too, of course.
Yeah, Russia Kimura was another one, and but yeah, I might add that they weren't really that many Japanese people up in Calgary, so I never knew what was.
They were all working for Stampede.
Yeah, they were nice enough guys. So pretty, not too much, problem with any, and they're all pretty easy to get along with. So,
but you guys never had officially in Stampede Wrestling Dynamite Kid versus Satoru Sayama, whether he had the hood on or not.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Sayama was the only one who never seemed to make it up there. I'm not sure he was having some.
Oh, I thought he was
issues with Inoki and Sakaguchi at that time.
Chigusa, the famous Japanese fantastic female wrestler, or she was in Calgary, of course, a little bit later on. Tiger Conway, can you hear us?
We're hearing him through Bob's phone.
He's through Bob's phone.
I don't know why his audio is not connected. Sometimes it is connected, but then he gets that feedback. Oh, there you go, Tiger. You're doing something.
You hear me?
Can
you guys hear him? I hope you can. I can't, but
we can see him.
We can see you, but we can't hear you.
I almost feel like it's because he doesn't have headphones in. Sometimes that can help.
Well, if he was able to plug them.
So, Dr. Mike, how did you get into the business? How did you become fascinated with this business? I've always wondered that about you.
And have we met, Matt?
We have never met. No, sir.
Well, we should, because Portland, one of the great territories. Boy, did I love, and we called him Papa Piper, Don Owen. But I ran the Sheik's fan club, his international fan club, like the mid-'60s. And fan clubs were sort of our version of the Sheets. There weren't any so-called dirt sheets, newsletters, no Observer.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Arisi and I took over the Blassie fan club. My boss in the LA territory, Jeff Walton, went to work as the PR guy. So we took over the Blassie fan club for years. And at the same time, I ran the Tolos Brothers fan club. But I was already shooting ringside at the Olympic Auditorium as a kid before I could drive or anything like that. I had to have people take me there. And I was best friends with, if you know the name, Richard Dawson, the Family Feud guy, but he starred on Hogan's Heroes. He did Laugh-In. Major movie star, did that movie with Schwarzenegger, Running Man, with Jesse Ventura also. And I was best friends with his two kids. And so he would take us so I could shoot at the Olympic. I was shooting ringside, and Mark and Gary had 8mm cameras, and they were filming with audio, Jimmy Lennon Sr. calling our matches until they got bored with wrestling. But I stuck to it as a photographer, because then they were transferred up to San Francisco to shoot Roy's Battle Royal cards and bigger shows. And then all shot all over the world. To Japan, first time was December '74 for the Jack Briscoe NWA title swap with Baba, which was a paid deal. And then the title went back from Baba to Briscoe 8 days later. Mexico City, Australia, pretty much every country that has pro wrestling I've shot. In Canada, the fantastic, boy did I love Canada because it was so unique. Toronto, Winnipeg, Altamco, stuff that I hadn't made Calgary yet, but Montreal, I went up there for the Jerry Park, what we were led to believe was a joint show between the Vachon Grand Prix promotion and International, the Rougeos. And on top, I'll do this really quickly, on top was Heel Heel. It turned Mad Dog face, Mad Dog versus Killer Kowalski. Underneath, Don Leo Jonathan against the fireball throwing Sheik, who I just was talking about, Ed Farhat. Bruno Sammartino, Ed Carpani. I believe they took the straps that night, Grand Prix championships from the original Hollywood Blondes with Red, Sir Oliver Humperdinck. You had the Leduc brothers, Carpentier's nephew, Jackie Weiss, Ed Ethifier, tons of guys were on the show. I think even Mulligan, who was an occasional for Blackjack Mulligan for the Vachons. Vern had sent him up there. This was like 73. And of course, Andre, forget what Andre, I think he was in a tag. He wasn't in a singles because Don Leo was in the match with the Sheik. But you can imagine like Bruce and Tiger, the color. Well, and Abby, I thought Abby was on that show too. So Abby, who we're supposed to have on here, who's no stranger to Tiger Conway Jr., you're his father. Tiger, can you hear us? We see you. Can you hear us? All right, man. Brother, it's been too long since I've seen you. And man, do I miss your parents, Ainita and Tiger Seenway? They were the sweetest people. I remember being at their retelling of their vows in Vegas, not at Cauliflower Alley, but at a LIWA Moolah and Johnny May Young deal. And they were the sweetest people in the business. I said earlier before you came aboard how it hurt me. Your dad was super proud of it, but he would talk about, being the Negro World Champion. He would hold up that belt. When he came to my TV studio in Northern California, he brought it. And I just thought, why couldn't it just, why all this Jim Crow bullshit and the racism, why it had to be a separate, dedicated Negro World Championship, sort of like the Negro baseball leagues. And I don't like using that word because it's offensive to me, and a lot of those guys, were better ball players than the Major League Baseball players. And so your dad was one of those Jackie Robinson type guys, but for our industry, I was trying to recall the guys before my own Mount Rushmore, but for the TV era for African-American guys, legends. So my Mount Rushmore would be Bobo, Art Thomas, Dory Dixon, Sweet Daddy Siki, but a little bit later, Bearcat Wright, Rocky Johnson, Earl Maynard, your dad, of course, Luther Lindsay. But there was some guy, was it Bill Johnson, who they actually say worked well before these guys, and maybe Matt knows, like in the 40s, breaking the color barrier. So we had actually somebody that I don't know if he achieved main event status prior to Bobo and Bearcat Wright winning the WWA World Championship in like 63 for the Los Angeles WWA World League, which encompassed Hawaii, Japan, of course, and a lot of the West Coast. Was it Bill Johnson? Who was that? The name escapes me. I know better historians with Michael.
I don't know that name. We had a guy a long time ago out here named Ricky Waldo.
He was African American?
Yeah.
Ah.
It doesn't sound like an African American name, does it? Ricky Waldo?
No. But,
he was one of Luther's. I remember Ricky Waldo, Shag Thomas, and a guy named Don Kindred, the Harlem Cat, they're all kind of cronies of Luther Lindsay's back in the late 50s, early 60s. And they all spent a fair bit of time up here. And I think Sailor Art was up here for a while around that time too, and later on Rocky Johnson came in just after that and was, I think, broke in up here. And so
Bruce, I got Chaz Leo in the chat. Bruce says that the stiff guy you were thinking of was Akira Maeda, Quick Kick Lee.
Akira Maeda, okay, who formed the Rings group in Japan when they all broke away from UWF. Fujiwara, Takada formed UWF1, Maeda formed Rings, Pancrase was I'll think of his name in a second, and Fujiwara formed Fujiwara Gumi. So all these guys were in the one super MMA group that Satoru Sayama, original Tiger Mask, started, and then they all split off. And Kira Maeda, but he was the one that had the stiff kick on Andre in Japan. and you never hear his name anymore. It's really sad. But back to Tiger. Tiger, I forget if a guy I'm really fond of. Spent a lot of time with him and Dutch Mantel on the road in different places. Of course, he was a star for the PAFO promotion, but teamed with you as a champion for the NWA was Pistol Pez. Did Pez pass away? He was a great amateur, really great, tremendous amateur. Did we lose Pez?
I'm not sure why we can't hear him or where we're hearing him from in the background. Maybe it's from Bob's phone.
I'm not sure.
I can hear a lot of Tiger. Maybe if we have Tiger shout, we'd get it.
Well, he's muted. I think he's still on the phone with Bob Johnson on another line. Bob, bring your phone closer to Bruce's mic. Let's see what happens.
We can just put the telephone right into the mic, and we can finally hear Tiger well.
So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring Tiger back on my phone, and he can talk on my phone.
Yeah. Let's ask him to start thinking who his Mount Rushmore of African American superstars would be. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Well, if we get Abby here, I'm going to be needling him to give you that plane money back for that December 15th, 1995, Stu Hart 80th, the 45th anniversary. Was it? Did you guys at the Stampede? Were you guys calling it the 45th anniversary of Stampede? Because that would be quite the thing.
It was supposed to be celebrating Stu's 80th birthday, and I think it was like the 45th anniversary or 48th or something like that of Stampede Wrestling as well. It had started in 48 or whatever, So,
I mean, I was so lucky to have been there, and I know you were pissed at Meltzer because he was supposed to be there, didn't show. He went to the Ultimate UFC thing in Denver. But all I did, you guys took me to the plane, and I made it to Ultimate in enough time in Denver the next day. But I was having more fun in Calgary because that was like the only territory in the world I never shot. And here I got to see all those legends, minus the guys that took your money but didn't show, Abby, Mongolian Stomper, and Dynamite. And I was still jazzed to see old friends like, was it Les Thornton, NWA World Champ? Les Thornton was there.
Yeah, and
Moscow.
WWE guys, Moscow was there, and Chris Jericho was there, even though he was kind of, I don't think he was even on the card. Benoit and Davey and Brett, of course, and Owen and Pillman and
Rhonda Singh.
Yeah, Rhonda. I remember Rhonda Singh had a few too many drinks as usual, and we were having this post-show party, and Rhonda projectile vomited all over the premier's wife on the couch or whatever.
But I got that shot. She puked on Stu's shoes, and I got her then being consoled by Stu and Terry Funk on the couch. They're all three in the couch. Rhonda in the middle, Stu Hart and Terry Funk.
Yeah, she seemed to have a propensity for when she did vomit. She did it with great force. It was kind of like, a barrage of whatever, But
here you can settle something because at last year's CAC, Haku was there, who was, I think he actually came in as Tonga King, not Tonga Kid in Los Angeles. And I thought it was 75. He came in, he worked with Gama Singh in Los Angeles. They said it was their first North American territory. And then they headed up to yours, Stampede with Stu. What year did Haku and Gama Singh come up? Wasn't it 76 or 75? When did they come up to Calgary? Do you remember?
Tiger.
I worked a lot with Haku down in Hawaii for Leah and Peter and all of that. I think he was called, I thought they called him Tonga or some such thing.
Tonga Kid, which of course,
something like that.
Later user.
Good guy, Haku. He was. That was kind of a bizarre scenario down there with Peter and Leah, and Rocky Johnson was there, and Haku, and they had a few other. Don Morocco was, I think,
Were you
around.
there when Brody and Kevin Sullivan came in for Leah? Because that was the shit when she wouldn't pay everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that was. Yeah, I remember all those guys. Kevin Sullivan was kind of.
And the Sheik,
somebody-
a couple of ones too.
Yeah, he wasn't that well regarded by a lot of the Japanese for whatever. Kevin, they seemed to have some major heat with each other, but
Who had heat? Kevin and Sheik?
Kevin and Hito and Sakurada and those guys were. I think they slapped Kevin around, and he was. I can't recall. I was just kind of a snot-nosed punk in those days, but I just hear some of those stories or whatever. But
We got a question for Dr. Mike in the chat.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Mike, do you still talk to Gene LaBelle? And what do you think of Ronda Rousey going off on the pro wrestling industry fairly recently?
Well, I think that was a work on Ronda's part, but I haven't. It's been like 3-4 months since I was able to talk to Gene. I don't know how his health is doing, which worries me because I did get the annual Christmas card. And the cool thing about Gene for the last 40 years is I worked with him in the LA territory. I was one of the ringside photographers, not the sole one. But and Jeff Walton was my immediate boss there because we did the program. And, he did that and all the PR and everything else. But Gene every year in his Christmas card would send this very elaborate, he'd make only like 100 of them and mail them out, a patch with him on there with a funny saying every year. So Gene was, the last time I talked to him, he wasn't doing judging for MMA, but he was still going to shows. He was still going to his trainee Gorkar's dojo, and Ronda would work out there on occasion and stuff because he obviously knew her. But I think the Ronda thing was just a work. I saw her on that game show on one of the U.S. networks last week. It was kind of funny. They introduced her as a wrestler, but how long has it been? 15, 16 months since she was in the whiff, which we call WWE. I don't even know if she's coming back because it must hurt her that Becky Lynch, that's not her real name, Rebecca Quinn, Becky Lynch gets pregnant while not really trying, because she didn't want it to interfere with her push as champion. And Ronda's been trying hard with her MMA husband, and she might have a child. And
come on.
I would Ronda to, geez, I guess keep trying or come back to the ring if it's not going to happen.
Hi.
What do you want, Bob?
I got the mic, Tiger. Can you hear me through the phone?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Oh,
Perfect. Here we go.
Okay, so we got Tiger on. I have to improvise here. Welcome, Tiger, the great Tiger Conway.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it open now to Bruce and everybody, Dr. Mike.
I don't see Bruce.
We got the great Tiger on there, and Matt, all yours, guys.
Hi, Tiger. Thanks for coming on, and I hope you're doing well. Great to have you on, and I'll let some of these guys ask you some questions, maybe relative to the Black Lives Matter or whatever else, and let's let them kind of render some perspective.
I'm going to jump in and probably interrupt everyone, so I apologize tonight. But Tiger, we heard Mark Henry and Booker T have spoken out. They've done some marching. Obviously, Dwayne Johnson has blown the whole world away with that speech, impassioned speech he gave, which was magnificent. Have you, because you and your dad are synonymous with Houston wrestling, Paul Bosch and Morris Siegel, what's been going on with you? Because it's that's like the one of the epicenters besides Minneapolis.
Yes, it's really something that what's going on in the world today is really good. But everything just boomed and blossomed out, and with the situation has happened years ago. I saw it coming. I visioned this. I traveled the roads first. I've talked to a lot of the boys, and I trained a lot of them. And I said a lot of things, and it came true. God bless everybody. I'm telling you, God is good that I can put these things down. I've traveled, and I've seen a lot. God told me that there will be days like this, pandemics, disease, and I saw it through. On my trip to India from Luton, and training and mentoring me, and living with us in Houston, coming home from India, my airplane was brought out of the sky by the Lebanon military. I looked out of the plane windows, and the jet was up under the 747. Just telling you guys now, this young kid, young man, saw it happen. It's really something. The United States of America, I love this country. Black Lives Matter, America is beautiful.
It's amazing I'm probably interrupted. It's amazing that the crowds every single night, 2 weeks now.
You hear me?
Yeah, I was going to say it's amazing the crowds are so racially diverse now.
Bruce, all of you guys, I saw that. And I prayed so hard. You would not believe it. And I've been praying ever since. And some of the guys looked at me and they said something to me. But my father told me, guess what? The congressman in Houston, Nikki Nealon, and the president had to call the shots to get me back home. We're still wrestling in Dallas, Texas. There was a delay. The only American on the plane. And I was taught to dream if there's ever started to be professional wrestling guys. And I've been praying ever since. And I didn't think they cared. But I made it back home. And I never forgot it. And it's been with me ever since. And sometimes you never know when you have to call on God. And I want y'all to know that I've been a cook for a long time. Thanks to my mother and father and grandmother. And my wife knows 49 years right now, going on 50 years. I've been in church a long time. And I tell you guys, a lot of things y'all know and don't know, but I kept it to myself. And I prayed every time I stepped in there by orders of my father. And the boys didn't know, but certainly knew. Wahoo laughed at me when he said, I know you prayed this. And he knew. The players knew. The guys knew. But my dream came true. I just want y'all to know that. I want to say God bless you all. Right now. But I made it back home. And thank you all for knowing the conversation. And I stopped to say that. So you all would know that part. You didn't know because they didn't say it. There's a lot of things I have to say. But I want to know, but going into the... It is something that you should know. I love my brother and my sister and my fraternity and family. Don't ever forget that, because and my father taught me, he taught me to never go against none of the boys. None of you all. Love them. Everything. I never charged anybody. No trend. No matter who it was, because it was hard to make it. I can say that now. And I knew every one of us that went down that road. What we were before, we started, and it wasn't my business to be in your business. But what you become is what it's all about. And how you make it is what it's about. Being a professional wrestler. I wasn't worried about your business. All I wanted to see was you make it in the world of professional wrestling. And all I wanted to do was make it good. Because I know all I do is take care of my business and stay out of other people's business. And I wasn't in their business. Black Lives was our business, and it was tough, guys. It was telling me, going up and down the United States. A young kid, I was a teenager. But I learned a lot from everybody. I respect them. I did. I respect the business. I never wanted to fight anybody within that ring. That's what it's all about. The man becomes the man and takes care of business. Who's bad? That champion, walk and talk. Chad O'Connor, the men of professional. It's great. And the men that take care of the business. What you put in it is what you get out. You can't deal with the business is what my father taught me. And the other thing that a real man of the business is what it's about. I know I might be doing some things, but I know it's the truth.
Tiger, can I ask you something about your dad and your relationship with Paul Bosch? Promoter Paul Bosch recognized as one of the honest, good guys, the very few, like Tunney, the original Tunney in Toronto. I can't really think of too many others, maybe Munchnick on some levels. But Paul Bosch, beloved, as is Gus Karras, who promoted for Geigel many towns like Kansas City, Kansas. Tell people what kind of guy was Paul Bosch. Did he deserve that beloved reputation as an honest? I think he did. You know, he and Baba, I think, probably the most honest, ethical promoters. But did your family's perception of Paul Bosch in Houston as a legendary promoter?
Oh my God. What a respected man in Houston. If you lived in Houston, to see someone take care of their business, Paul Bosch was the man. And the way that he took care of his people in front of the people and the fans and the business part of it was unbelievable. The way that the people loved this man was unheard of, unprecedented. Respect, number one. Walked up to him and he had respect. He knew right away. They respected this man as a kid, special days, and when he became the owner of Houston Wrestling for 50 years, for 25 years, 50 years, 20 years. The people knew. The people knew how many years from one building to another, to the old building to the new building or whatever. The decoration or whatever it was, the city for electricity and all here, it was unheard of, unprecedented. It was paid for in advance. The lights, electricity, and all, no problem. That's what the electric company said. No problem. I knew the black people that worked at electricity, Orientals or whatever, and the anniversaries and that date it was times that they did parties and stuff like that. The Sunways were invited. And as kids, I was the nephew, different days, and Mother's Day, I saw that. Certain times, certain people in business were there. I remember about Paul, but very well respected. From the police force, the mayors, just top of the line.
I bring him up because I wanted to tie in Bruce Hart. I think Bruce was grabbing a brewski or something. But Paul Bosch, I just asked him like 2 days ago, was it Paul Bosch or Lord James Blears or both of them that introduced Stu and Helen in Long Beach, New York? So I don't know if Bruce is within earshot, but we have a tie-in with Tiger Conway, Houston promoter Paul Bosch, perhaps the most beloved, at least in the United States, Baba in Japan, giant Shohei Baba. But Tiger, can you tell us a little about one of my favorite people on planet Earth, Reverend Ernie Ladd, Ernie Big Cat Ladd, who was greatest big man, I think. I hate to say, forget about Andre, but Don Leo Jonathan and Ernie Ladd were the greatest big men in my book in terms of quality wrestling, and a quality human being was Ernie Ladd.
Big Ernie, what my mentor was. My dad had the kid had the honor of training him to become a wrestler at the football league. My dad said, my God, If people want to retire right now, this guy is too damn cool. Ernie got, I don't know, if they just want to retire right away. They shouldn't put this on. But only need to break Ernie in. He said, God.
I know Thez worked with Ernie in Houston, but who taught Ernie those skills? And Bruce, I was doing a tie-in with you because I said, of course, we just had that conversation. Was it Paul Bosch or Lord Blears or both of them that introduced Stu to Helenard in Long Beach, New York? So there's the tie-in with Tiger Jr.
I've been through quite a bit with some of them. The deal in Dallas, I don't know if everybody knows about them. Mike Singletary, the football player, also the Negro jump. Bruce made that too. And Tex Brady, one of the best wrestlers there. Mike Singletary's uncle, Mike Singletary's uncle, Tex Brady, he had to fix his birth before he was ticket in Negro in Dallas, Texas. The football player. The uncle. Yeah, he was in the Negro ticket. Yeah.
So let me ask you, Tiger. I'm sorry, because I can't hear your audio, so I don't know when I'm interrupting fully or badly. I was going to say, like Ernie Ladd, I don't know who taught him the promos, but the way Kurt Angle, for example, took to pro wrestling, Ernie Ladd from football, we hadn't seen anybody until Kurt Angle even closely resemble Ernie. But the promos he would cut when he would come into a territory like Los Angeles for the first time, and the guy holding the mic would get too close to him. He'd go, "You're not a doctor or a nurse. Don't touch me." He would just have these things. He was so fast. Ernie Ladd was. But earlier I came up with what I call an argumentable television era Mount Rushmore of African American wrestlers, and I just threw out Bobo, Sailor R. Thomas, Dory Dixon, Sweet Daddy Siki. Who would you have? And it doesn't have to be limited to 4, but who would Tiger Conway Jr. have as his Mount Rushmore? Obviously, I would put, for you, your dad up there, Tiger Conway Sr.
Wow. I know. He said Luther would be one. Luther for sure. Oh my God.
Bearcat, maybe?
Who's the other? Was I guess maybe Sailor movie?
Sailor R. Thomas, yeah, that was in mine too. Sailor R. Thomas.
Throw that name in.
How about maybe Sweet Daddy? What about Sweet Daddy?
And Dory Dixon, people forget, and Dory Dixon went on to be a lucha guy in Mexico and went on to commission.
Carlos Colon.
Dory Dixon, maybe?
And how about Abby? Abdullah?
Abdullah?
Abby, for sure.
Abdullah went through everybody.
Throwing Sweet Daddy. He was.
And you got Sweet Daddy, Ziggy?
Sweet Daddy?
Yeah.
Because those guys were all part of the late 50s, Vince McMahon Sr. You had on the other side, you had Buddy Rogers and his guy Billy Darnell and Johnny Valentine, his crew, Magnificent Maurice, Beautiful, or whatever it was, Handsome Johnny Barron and his partner, Magnificent Maurice. But on the other side, at least for the guys that popped the crowd, Bobo, Art Thomas, I forgot he was working in the Northeast, Dory and Sweet Daddy Siki. Those guys, that's why they're on my Hall of Fame or my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, and Rocky Johnson too. Rocky's
came a little later. I put Bearcat and Rocky and stuff like that.
Yeah, Rock's dad was in there in the mid '60s.
And you know who blew me away in Kansas City? I know people Mid-Atlantic, but Rufus R. Jones was big time. He was Mr. Kansas City and Mr. Kiel Auditorium. He was tremendously over.
I had Ron Simmons, Booker T, Stevie Ray.
That's about
Longhead
Watley
Johnson.
too. He was another.
What about
Been down there at Steamboat, Ric Flair.
what about Pistol Pete?
Pistol Pez Watley.
Pistol Pez Watley.
It goes on and on, and
But Pez was a major amateur champion too before. Right? He was one of the few great.
all the other two guys. Shoot, Art Wilson and Mr. Boosters.
And in the Tennessee area, Bearcat Brown was like their version of Bobo Brazil. He was huge, and he would team with Bobo, and Bearcat would come in. Burrhead Jones, yeah. Pork Chop Bobby Cash, a legend.
And then Mabel Lim,
Carlos Colon.
Austin.
How about Carlos Colon?
Wasn't Carlos Colon like half Puerto Rican, half African American? He was a legend, though, of course.
Carlos Malone used to collate together. Ming, I had Ming in the division. Tonga Kid.
Tiger, did you know Bearcat Brown, who we lost to cancer? Not Bearcat Brown, but Brickhouse Brown. Brickhouse Brown, tremendous human being.
Fantasy, right? Yeah.
Say that again.
Brickhouse, I don't know if you knew Brickhouse Brown. He came a little bit after you, and he was supposed to.
We had him on our show about 2 months before he died.
Yeah, he worked for Memphis too, in Dallas.
Yeah, we had Brickhouse Brown on an old copy of a couple of years ago, about maybe a month before he passed away. We had him on Heartbeat Radio, and that's people can listen to that interview anytime. It's up, it's online. So
yeah, it was his farewell to the world.
I think I started with McMahon. I started with McMahon early. Neidhart and Art. Foundation there in the beginning. The Titan Sports. When they start the team and everything, I saw everything. And Bosch sent me to Atlanta right away before they see me CBS. Where I used to move from Houston on the red to Atlanta television. I was with Bobby Shane and the valet.
Sherry. His name was also Sherry before Sherry went to
Omni, open up the Omni. That's what it when Bob Armstrong, the kid. I don't know why I'm not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. all of it. Michael Jordan and with North Carolina. Michael Jordan, North Carolina. Up with Bernie Wilkins when Burnett came that name to the movie. All of those guys. I right there. Cabinet all of that. Bill Drummond, all of them. Every last one. I think I had 10,000.
Yes, I've got to go. I'm on that. I'm on that cancer medication. I just want to throw out something. I'm still working for these guys and these guys in Europe. I think you could get them at Global, but still, I have to work with the last American magazine we have on wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I don't mean to do a
Right.
plug, but
Real quick, Dr. Mike, before you go, I do have a question. Did Dan Severn force you to shave your mustache many years ago, or was it a personal choice?
no, it was. I think it was a personal choice because I was tired of having a porno mustache and being compared to Danny Severn, who's one of the greatest people in the world and a good friend of
I
mine.
figured maybe him and Don Fry backed you into a corner somewhere.
No, I was there though when Marty Funk did that weird thing and slapped him, and he thought it was a shoot and it wasn't, or he thought it was a work and it was a. He thought it was a shoot and it was a work, and he got pissed off at her. This was in Florida. It was the craziest thing you'd ever seen on a Howard Brody show that made no sense. But that's Marty Funk, and it happened. But anybody that wants or interested for MMA and pro wrestling, I've been shooting wrestling, boxing, MMA, and rock concert stuff. My email is WREALANO@AOL.com. It looks like Real Lano with a W in front. So, Tiger, I hope you'll email me so we'd be linked, brother, because I miss you. I loved your parents so much, your whole family.
Thank you. And I got one more thing to say. I forgot to say the most important thing. I forgot to say, when I got to Charlotte, North Carolina, I met Tony Atlas. I was with Tony Atlas in the beginning in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I tell you, that was a chore. I tried my best to teach Tony Atlas before Ole Anderson got him. And Mr. Weaver, the bodybuilder. And that was it.
Let me throw out two more names of African-American legends. Tom Jones, who came in, they actually paired him, a racist thing, they paired him with S.D. Jones in L.A., and they called them the Jones Boys. Really racist thing. They overcome it. Tom Jones, one of the great junior heavyweight guys, actually pretty much from McGurk territory before Bill Watts took it over. Earl Maynard, I can't say enough great things about Earl the Pearl, Mr. Universe. And so many American stars that we celebrate, but too many people. When your dad came with Red Bastien and Mae Young and Moolah, we filmed a bunch of stuff at my TV when Buddy Rogers stayed, but we were blocks away from the Fruitvale Station where Oscar Grant got murdered by the BART police. You know that movie called Fruitvale Station? Huge movie with Michael B. Jordan. And it was blocks away, my TV studio, what's now Comcast. Your dad was there. We actually drove by Fruitvale BART Station, the train subway station. And, it's why do we have these things like Floyd in Minneapolis by way of Houston? It just keeps on and on and on. So hopefully the 2 weeks plus now of peaceful protest and people calling out racism and stuff finally will have an effect. Because in your day, Tiger, it was like, Selma, etc., were just like one-day events. This pissed off people worldwide to where it's been 2 weeks, and I hope it keeps going next week.
If there's any message you'd like to give to the blacks in this
Love you all. Love that.
Tiger, just before you go here, Tiger, just before you go, Tiger, we want to thank you very much for coming on. Is there a message you can give to all the black folks tonight on our show live?
I would like to say to all of my friends and all of my people, all of my fans and everybody. God loves everybody. Everybody take care. Look, we got to get through this. There's only one way. You know what to do. Follow your right mind and do the right thing. You can follow it, what you're supposed to do. Listen and listen right. Go right, live right, follow the right way, go the right way, and be yourself. Look at yourself. Look at what's happening. You know what to do. All you got to do is do it. The sky is the limit. Go ahead. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Be in God's hands. Pray for everybody. Pray for everybody. Love everybody.
United,
Live the right way.
wouldn't you agree? United we stand. United we stand. Divided we fall. Black lives matter.
These Canadians don't even know what the saying is, practically.
Black lives matter.
Thanks, Tiger, and God bless.
Love you guys. Love you all, boys.
Thank you, and
Always.
we shall come.
And for all of you listening, we shall also work to overcome the audio errors, some of the technical difficulties we had tonight, so that we can get more fine men like Tiger Conway Jr. on here to talk about wrestling's history. I want to thank Sean Bryant. I want to thank Bruce Hart. I want to thank Tiger Conway Jr. And I want to thank Dr. Mike Lano. We're going to be back here next Sunday, right around 7:30 Pacific time, with more Bruce Hart and the men of professional wrestling. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful week. And remember that all together as one, we can fight statism in the United States, and we can bring more peace to the streets. Amen.
Amen.